Rosa.
Here.
Mary Ann Turner, Charlie Masters, Andrew Urbanowitz.
Here.
Lynn Skull, Jay Keller, James Brisden.
As we are all familiar with the building, I'm going to skip the agenda item 3. Would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as we have no public hearings tonight, we're going to skip number 5 on the agenda, move on to item number 6. As a reminder, on our March 28th meeting, the following members were present: myself, Maurice LaRosa, Charles Masters, Lynn Skull, and Andrew Urbanowitz. I received an email from Lynn tonight saying that she was not able to attend. Therefore, going forward on this, since 3 of the 5 members are here, Mary Ann, are you familiar with what we've discussed?
Yes.
Then the 4 members seated will be voting tonight. At our March 28th meeting, we had a discussion on changing the ZBA, as it falls within the ZBA guidelines. ZBA now has, under their regulations, an appeal period of 30 days. We're looking to change that to 15 days per recommendation of the offices of planning and zoning.
I need to ask a question. The meeting was on the 25th.
I'm sorry, was it? 25th, you're right.
Then our minutes are wrong.
Yeah.
It got changed.
It says the 25th.
Email.
It says the 25th in the first
No, I
paragraph.
understand. It got
Gotcha.
changed after it got sent out.
I'm sorry. It
You
is the
you were
March
throwing me,
25th.
sorry. I just want to update the, who was attending.
So, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there
Second.
a second? Is there any further discussion? As there is none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion passes 4-0-0. New business. None. Approval of minutes. You have your March 25th packet. Our regular meeting. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
Just the date so far.
All those in favor? Motion passes 4-0. Jenny, correspondence, staff report?
Yep, previous meetings you had asked for, me to provide you with 2 items. A recap of applications brought before the board and where they stood. And you'll find my memo dated April 10th. The only 2 that are left are the Cedar Street, and that the timeframe hasn't come out on.
Jenny, can you put your mic on?
Oh, sorry. You had asked me to recap what I had done, where the applications that had been denied were at this point. And I recapped them for you in a spreadsheet. I don't know if you have any questions. It has 2011 and 2012. 2013 will start. It started with the Cooper Street, and that one, May 1st hasn't come yet, so I'm on top of it. It's still there. The other thing you had asked for was where we stood with the ExxonMobil, the remediation tanks. And I provided you, I emailed the gentleman to see if he still was the one in charge, because if you remember correctly, it changes.
Changed.
He still is the one in charge. He said that they removed the larger one as they said they would do, and I went back in the minutes and provided you with the minutes where he does say that. And he said there isn't anything to discuss because the small one's going to stay there until it tests clean.
Which could be years.
Correct. And that was a loophole.
Yeah, but at least,
Made
I
progress.
mean, right, we made progress. One group of people before this guy told us, no, we need the large one.
Yeah.
And now he's saying we don't need it, so they've removed it. So we've made some progress with it.
Yes, and we'll make sure that no new ones show up.
Good.
Okay?
But why did they remove it?
He didn't give me an answer. Apparently, it's not needed anymore. You know, I don't think that the state DEEP would allow them to take it out if it still was necessary.
I think the reason is it never worked,
That's possible.
because they had nothing but trouble with it.
Well, I'm just happy it's the big one and not the little one. If the little
I'm
one
glad
was
it's-
taken out, the big one would stay there, I'd say, for another 5 or 7 years. Just safe estimate.
Nicely done on the follow-up.
Hmm?
Nicely done on the follow-up.
Thank you. And I think that was all you asked for. Oh, one other thing, I enclosed, we had some discussion on the certificate of zoning compliance and the need for the applicant to request it before they got their approval. In other words, they need to request it, but it can't be given until after the action is completed. And it was kind of like a catch-22. Some of them asked for it too late, and some of them didn't ask for it at all. So I took it upon myself to take one of the notice of decision letters that Barb types up and Mary Ann signs, and in bold and underlined, that's the part I'm suggesting be added to the letter. It just simply says your building permit will not be signed by the zoning enforcement officer until a formal request is made to the zoning enforcement officer for a certificate of zoning compliance. That puts them on notice that if I don't have that little request, they're not going to get their building permit application. Does anybody see any concerns with that?
No, I'm glad you
No.
did it.
Yeah.
All right, then going forward, the next approval that we have, this is going to be added to what I call the boilerplate, but you will see this going forward on a regular basis.
Oh, perfect.
And I really think this time that's all I had. Is there anything else you have questions on?
I do. At our last meeting, we talked about the $350 town attorney fee.
Yes,
Was anything looked into that?
I thought I sent you the email on that, stating that somebody had asked me, one of the members had asked me, if I could send the actual paperwork, because perhaps I had misunderstood the request for $350, so I went back to the email, and apparently I didn't send it to everybody, but
I
hopefully
don't
somebody
recall
got
seeing
it.
I don't remember seeing it.
Okay.
I think you sent it, Jenny. I saw it.
Okay,
It was a PDF
okay,
that you had sent them out
all right.
a long
but
time ago.
at least
after
somebody
that.
Did
got
you
it.
read it?
Yeah.
Is it stating that we're responsible for a $350?
For the type of cases that we do, yes.
So we need to make sure that's in our budget.
We should have, and the other question it raised in my mind was, what about the marshal fee? Is the town
Right.
picking that up, or are we paying that too?
We've always in the past paid the marshal fee.
Okay.
Jose went in and, it's my understanding, Jose went in and swept what was left out of the budget to pay for the $350 for the one that we sent. I think it's 148 Enfield Street, the car dealership, the one that I sent down to the town attorney. And she needed the town attorney's office needed the $350 to proceed. I believe that what little money we had left in the marshal's fund is gone. And I think, I'm not sure how you remedy that, because I'm not privy to the budget, but I think that your budget's been set for the year.
Well,
No, they haven't we've gone through the process, but they haven't finalized the overall budget yet. So can we get a copy of the budget that was proposed so we can see it And if there's a line item in there for this legal fees, can we see that it's been filled, or we have to reallocate?
Okay. I'll
And
see if
you
I can find it tomorrow and shoot it out to you, send it
also
email.
resend that previous memo?
Right, I don't remember seeing that, and you know I answer you right away.
Yes, I will find it and send it back to
Boy,
you.
if we could hurry up and get this fine ordinance in place, we wouldn't have to worry about paying this bill
Well,
for the attorney ourselves.
that's what prompted this discussion. It seems that we're paying for something, which, you have to take some people to court, but if that's the only tool we have, it's gonna get awfully expensive
Yeah.
each time I send one downstairs. You have sometimes you can send a first letter saying, hi, we really need you to comply with this. Either way, if that doesn't work, then you send a notice of violation letter. If the notice of violation letter doesn't work, you send the cease and desist. If the cease and desist doesn't work, it goes downstairs and there's $350 each time.
Gonna get expensive quick.
But I will find the budget item and I'll find the other email. And
Thank you.
Send it back out to all of you again.
Okay, moving along, other business.
I went
Mr. LaRosa.
the planning and zoning meeting on, was it the 24th? And as I was sitting at home watching the meeting, and our town planner kept talking about lot coverage, total lot coverage, building lot coverage, and I started getting a little bit concerned. So I showed up at the meeting to speak, and I guess what they're trying to do is make it so people can build more on their property. But with that, the regulation that we wrote up and asked them to put in, and they approved it and put it in, is one of those regulations that may be coming right back out. Because as I watched the whole meeting go on, and they were explaining, the planner was explaining building coverage and then total lot coverage, decks were under total lot coverage, even though we had a regulation put in that stated that if it was attached to the primary dwelling and gave access to the dwelling, that it would be counting towards building coverage. And that's not how it's being interpreted now. And I've continued to say, well, I know how it should be interpreted, I wrote it.
And
But-
how is Planning and Zoning Commission interpreting it?
Well,
I wouldn't say they're there yet.
I don't really have that answer. The meeting, the whole thing they were supposed to be discussing was impervious surfaces. But somehow decks kept getting thrown in there.
No,
So
that's close, but no cigar. They were supposed to be talking, what started their discussion to look at lot coverage was impervious
Right.
surface. Where they've gone with it now is, and I should have brought a copy of that ordinance, I didn't bring it with me, is changing, you know how we have the 20% rule? It could go to 45 or 65%. And setbacks would be what would cause them to stay within compliance.
So my concern was that the regulation we asked to be put in is really just gonna go away.
Well, you have to realize that under the regulations and between the different departments, it's planning and zoning who writes the regulations.
absolutely.
And we assisted them because there was a misunderstanding on decks.
Right.
And we assisted them, but it wasn't our responsibility to write the regulation. So if planning and zoning writes the regulation, it's our job to enforce it.
Correct.
So that's where that will go. So if the whole thing disappears and they go to 60% coverage, then that's a planning and zoning.
Oh, right, I'm just making you,
Decision.
right, I'm just letting the board be aware of the fact that I went and spoke and that regulation
that.
is there and the actions that could be coming from that. Also, we had the Thompsonville Fire Department come in front of us for some variances.
Yes.
And they were granted some variances and denied some variances. One of the variances that they were denied was, and they weren't completely denied, was a reduction of the buffer zone. And 4 parking spots were removed in order to make the buffer zone as wide as we
Adjacent to
could,
the
or adjacent to the
residential.
residential area. I did learn today that planning and zoning has overturned that denial of the variance.
Did they overturn the variance, or are they ignoring the variance?
Ignoring it, I guess, because they've given permission now to reduce the buffer.
No,
that
did
we
they
said-
give permission to replace, put back in the parking
Yes.
spots? Okay, they didn't reduce the buffer,
Well,
they're
when you-
ignoring it.
When you put the parking spots back, you've reduced the
You're
buffer.
reducing the buffer.
I mean, semantics is, you look at it either way, but it does violate the regulation that's in place.
The
Jenny?
variance.
If I'm not mistaken, when the Thompsonville Fire Department brought the drawings in to planning and zoning, that was shown on the plans, even though you, as a group, had discussed modifying and taking out, it was
Correct.
back. And while they do get your minutes and of the meetings, it's hard, I think, to stay on top of everything. And I don't think that it was I can't speak for the planning and zoning, but they have a lot of things on their plate, just as you do, and things tend to sometimes,
Okay, I have a
No,
question.
I spoke with the chairman. They were aware that they were removed.
okay.
They made a conscious decision to put them back.
Oh, okay, then I
So my concern is that we currently have 2 organizations giving relief from zoning regulations. One gave one decision on a relief, and one gave another decision on a relief.
I'm not following you.
Well, we denied relieving that,
We
Part-
denied it.
correct?
That's not
Planning and
relief.
zoning
Approved it.
approved it. So which board now, because do the variances and denials stand? Or do the,
Before we jump the gun, let's get our ducks in order. Have they filed the variance for the record?
no.
Okay. If you recall, when they presented their application to us, they stated that they would hold up filing the record, for the record, until they received all their approvals. Right now, it hasn't been filed, the variance doesn't exist.
correct?
I should say that it wasn't filed as of late last week, so I'm assuming
Okay.
it still has not been filed.
Would you please check?
Yep.
Because if it has been filed, and I'm just concerned about the variance, the ZBA variance, if that's been filed, then Planning and Zoning Commission cannot overturn our regulations.
Okay.
If it hasn't been filed, then it doesn't exist. And what will happen at this point, and Jenny, I'd like you to look into it. Planning and Zoning, as of their last meeting, allowed those 4 parking spaces. If they do not file on the land records for the variances, then the firehouse will have to come back for our approval.
Okay, I'm confused. If the variances that are sitting upstairs in our department have
Do-
not been
If
filed,
they do not get filed on the land records, then no variances exist. And therefore, they have no approvals from ZBA.
Which means they can't move forward.
Right.
So they're gonna need to come back before ZBA.
well, what would, devil's advocate, what would happen if they just came in tomorrow and filed the variances?
Then their variance, they'd be,
Then they would have been
can't ha-
denied.
Then they can't file planning and zoning on the
Oh,
land
it's
records.
special use permit? So it's either or, either it's a variance or the special use permit?
no.
We can't give a variance and then have planning and zoning pull that variance.
Okay,
Right now, when it's filed on the land records, that property is varied
okay,
by what we've set up. If they go to file the planning and zoning approval,
okay.
we're in contradiction.
So if I understand you correctly, if they file planning and zoning and the variances have not been filed, they would have to come back to you?
Right. If they can't file both of them because they're contradicting each other.
Okay.
You have one board saying that there's a variance on the property, and another board saying, or another commission saying that there isn't.
But what about all the variances? There were multiple variances the night we met with them,
There are,
and they're all tied together in the same
as one.
letter.
As one.
Which would mean, did the planning and zoning move the building forward or back, or?
We
give-
don't know. And that's what I'm asking Ginny to look into.
Yeah. It was my excuse me, I could be mistaken, but it was my understanding that the planner wanted to hold the variances until the land actually belonged to the fire district, and I think that's taken place, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
didn't,
But you understand my concern?
Yes. I will research it tomorrow, and I will send you all what I find,
Okay.
which one, if any, have been filed.
could you also, I know I could look them up, but if it's easy, if it's quick, can you send me the minutes that describes why we allowed them to hold it and the stipulation that we gave them?
Sure.
From what I remember, we allowed them to not file it at this time because they wanted all their approvals in place.
I want to reread it to see if it was that, or if it was until the land was
Right,
purchased.
I think it was,
There was no mention that I recall of the
That I
land being
recall.
purchased. It was to get all their approvals.
The question that I have is the parking spaces were only one of the variances. We moved the
I
building.
believe what the attorney said was if they couldn't get all their approvals, then they weren't gonna go forward. They weren't gonna buy the property. So that's why they wanted all their approvals in place.
But what I'm saying is, we gave them variances and quote approvals to go ahead.
Correct.
Then they went to planning and zoning, and as best I know, planning and zoning ignored the parking spaces. We took them out, they put them in.
Right.
We moved the building, we moved it back, we moved the buffer. But they were, all those things we did were tied together. The question is, did planning and zoning ignore everything we did? Or did the applicant not go to planning and zoning with those changes and showed them the original documents that they showed us?
My understanding from what I just heard from Jenny is that when they went to planning and zoning, they went with the original drawings.
Which would then mean that the building isn't moved and the front isn't fixed and the
Correct.
side yard isn't done.
I don't want to say that. I thought I saw the parking spaces that were taken out, put back in.
Had they, kind of reiterate what I was saying, had they gone through the process correctly, they would have gone to planning and zoning first with their set of drawings. Planning and zoning would have looked at the original drawings that we saw before we made any changes. They would have looked at those and they would have either approved or not approved. For sake of conversation, let's say they approved. The next step was to come before ZBA. They went out of order, but then they should have come before ZBA after planning and zoning. ZBA would have looked at it and gone through the process that we went through with the changes that we made. So we would have varied that property. And that's what should go into the land records, is what was varied, not what planning and zoning approved. the cart before the horse and so on and so forth. Okay, as long as you completely understand.
Yep.
That's it.
Any other business?
Nope,
Okay, motion to adjourn,
So moved.
moved.
second?
Second.
We are adjourned. All in favor? We are adjourned.